parent constraints. Can't we just live without them? Greetings, wizards and staff wielders. Welcome to my constraint video setup. Who'd have thought that something this simple could be such a nightmare? Parent constraints are a dick. And in this video, we're gonna cover a strong foundation of weapon constraint to your character's hands. Hopefully by the end of the video, you'll be on and out your way to kick some ass in animation. Isn't that be fun to learn? Yes, it would be. I'm gonna show you how I constrain a staff or spear or bow to a character's hands and have a good strong foundation to get you animating between both hands. This is the Donatello rig. This is what I picked up from my time on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where we worked with Donatello, who was all about a bow staff. So I want to share that constraint with you guys, and hopefully it'll help you out with your animations. So let's get to it. So when setting this pull constraint up, one of the biggest things that we're going to be utilizing is the Anibot Suite tools. And then just for this example, I'm just going to use a piece of geometry, which I've named Staff. Super original. So when moving it to set up this particular constraint, this is somewhat how we did it on Ninja Turtles utilizing the Donatello rig. The difference between this and many other constraint type setups is we're going to be using the weapon itself as the motivator to move both of the hands simultaneously. I got my outline opener to show you what's happening during this time. I'm going to be opening up this little modify down menu because I'm going to be using this freeze transformation tool as well as a center pivot command too. So I'm going to keep this open for just a second. So the big thing that I want to do is that first off, the staff is set up to where it's centered pivot. We want to double check that and make sure that's true. And the one big thing that we want to do with the staff is actually add a shell to it or just put it in a group using Control G. I'm going to rename this to Hips Constraint. We'll come back to that a little later. In order to reposition this to the middle selection, we're going to be using center pivot as well. We want everything to match up with our pull that we've got. So we're just going to set this out to the side and then work with our constraints here. Okay, now in order to do this, we're going to be reverse parenting constraining and tricking Maya into giving this rig new IK handles. And what I'm wanting to do here is I'm wanting to set up a new locator to take the place of the IK control. Have this modified just for a second. And what we're going to be doing is making a new locator. We're going to be making quite a few of these. So what I'm going to go here is just go to create locator. And now with the new locator in Maya scene, there's a cool little double bar pink tool here using Anibot called Align tool. So all I have to do with this locator selected is just shift select the IK and then hit Align. And then that will move the locator exactly to the center of the IK handle, which is great. Now with this new location, what I'm going to do is just rename this to the beginning left constraint. I'm just going to put left hand constraint. All I want to do on top of this as well too is just to add a left hand control. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate this constraint and rename this left hand control. And this will be eventually be the new IK handle that we're going to be substituting for this IK. And now as we've done the left hand, we're going to be also making a right hand constraint as well too. So I'm going to just duplicate this and name it, you guessed it, right hand constraint. And then with the right hand constraint selected, I'm going to be selecting the right IK handle and then snapping it over. And then with that, I'm going to duplicate the right hand constraint and name this now right hand control. The biggest thing overall is that now with all these translations and rotations created, all I'm going to do is just freeze everything. So freeze transformation, left hand, but you have to do this individually. You can't, unfortunately, you can't shift select everything and freeze translate it all together. Great. Now that I have these all aligned to my hand controls, I'm going to start doing a little bit of parenting. And the big thing I'm going to be concerned about are these left-hand controls. So what I like to do in order not to be confused by already so many controls that are there is I'm going to grab each control and I'm going to scale them up a little bit to see exactly where these new controls are going to be. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the left hand and the right hand constraints to constrain our IK handles too. So these will be the new movers of these controls. Now from here, what I want to do is I want to make sure that these constraints are moving with the controls too. So in order to do that, I'm going to be making these left hand controls and right hand controls children of the right hand and left hand constraint. But what I like to do to avoid confusion is just middle drag the control into the constraint. And we're going to do the same thing there with the right hand constraint as well too. Now with that all fixed up, now the left hand constraint is moving the control as well as the constraint itself. So now with this selected, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be making our new left and right hand controls with the new locators that we've set up. We're just going to select the left hand control, select the left hand IK, go to constrain, parent, option box, and I do this just to as a rule of thumb to reset settings. Make sure maintain offset is set, and then we're going to hit add. And by doing that, we now have our new left hand control. And we're going to do the same thing with our right IK hand as well too. So from there, we're going to grab our right hand control, grab our right hand IK, do the same thing, which is G, which is parent and constraining everything there, and then double checking always that things are working fine, which they seem to be doing good too. Now, in order to kind of clean this up because things are getting a little too busy, what I do is I kind of take the IKs that are not going to be moving anymore, and obviously they have a few attributes that we're going to be needing to do in the future. And what I like to do just on both of them to make sure I don't mess up anything is I'll just right click and lock these guys. Make sure those are locked. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll put these guys on a new layer. I'll just hide them so that way I see the new locator controls. And what I'll do is I'll rename this layer, maybe just like no touchy. So good, so far so good. Now that we have these two brand new IK controls for the left and right hand, I'm going to be parenting the weapon itself to these constraints. Now normally in TMNT, we did this with the outliner and it was a pain in the ass. So one big thing that I would like to do is utilize what we have here is select sets down in the Animbot tool list. And this will be good for kind of helping me organize what I'm doing. For the left hand constraint, I'm just going to be making left constraint, labeling that yellow. And then the same thing with the right constraint, And also here too, I could also make the left control. Let's just put left hand for short, right hand as well. So R hand. Cool. So now that I got both these set up, it'll be easy to work with what I'm doing. And also just for good measure, I'm just going to grab the staff and make this one a selection as well too. Let me put this in the blue. Great. All right, now the official constrainment of the staff to the hands will begin. I want to make sure everything is lined up specifically. So going to the top view, I'm going to grab, let's do the left one first, because I am a lefty. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically move this control somewhere in the front that's going to align the hand with the weapon itself. So now this is going to be a great part to actually show the extent of your character, how far they can move out with the pole. Okay, so now with the hand outstretched, I'm going to get rid of these controllers just to show you what we're working with the constraints themselves. I'm going to go up to the top left constraint. And now, because the rig did not come in T-pose, we're going to have to do a little bit more evening out to make sure that this new controller is parented to this pole in a very object space orientation. And what I mean by that is by going to the top, I'm just going to take a look at all the controls that are here, and I'm going to be trying to evening all of this out. And so from looking at these R rotations, these rotate rotations, I'm not going to need -13 here. I'm just going to need 0. And then the RX and the RZ, I'm going to be bringing it to its nearest 90 degrees. So -90 here and 90 here too. This is going to be the ultimate 90-degree hand object pose that I'm going to need to constrain this hand to the staff, bringing it down just a little bit. And then from there, I'm going to do my best to actually try to attach the staff the best that I can to the hand itself. So this looks fairly pretty cool. And now one of the big things is that I'm going to have to make a nice grip pose in order to show the space in between. And a good thing about that is that I have a kind of like a predestined hand pose built in here in a studio library. It's free online if you want to install it. I highly recommend using it in order to help you save time, and add that to apply. And now with a nice little firm grip to the pole, I'm going to want to do the same thing for the right arm as well. So with the left constraint already organized to the staff, if you've named everything correctly, you should be able to use this mirror tool in Animbot and mirror this position in space to the pole if all goes well. And it did, which is great. And now we go back to the fingers and we're going to mirror that pose as well too. And now we have a nice grip. Using these Animbot tools can really save time, so don't underestimate it. Okay, great. Go to the constraints. We'll notice that going in object mode will bring the hand clearly up and down the pole without it going back and forth. This is important when it comes to resetting your pose or translating your grip up and down the pole. By doing it this way, you're guaranteeing that you won't have any space breakage between the weapon and the hand itself. But now in our new position, our pole, what we're going to do is just freeze the transformation on this position to make sure everything's zeroed out. This will be our default pose to come back to our character. And now what we're going to be doing to relieve control over the hands to the weapon is we're going to be parenting the left and right hand constraints to the pole. We're going to grab our staff, we're going to shift select our left control, and this will be our setup. And what we're going to do here is just go to Parent Constraint, set settings, add, and do the same thing for the right hand constraint as well. Hit G, hit add. And now, if all goes well, the new pole should be moving the hands into the weapon. So from here, you can basically get to any pose that you want to with the weapon, RZ, RY, RX, and the hands will be moving with this pole as well too. And then going back to 0, we'll bring it back to default too. Now, remember the hips constraint? So now what we're gonna do is just use this hips constraint we've made and parent constrain that to the hips and let that drive as well too. So zeroing out these hips, we're gonna shift select the hips constraint, and again go to our parent constraint, and this should drive the pole itself as well as with everything to our rig. And now we can really play around with this rig to show off what exactly we've done here. I can get our character in kind of a cool pose. And now the great thing is, now that with my constraints are being moved by the pole, I now have, now that I collapse everything, I now have individual new IK controls over this rig. And now as I go back to my new left hand and right hand that are zeroed out translations and rotation wise, now I can move this up and down the pole to my whim and keyframe however I want it to be moved around this pole. I can rotate this pole to the top, readjust how my character's holding this pole. And the cool thing about having this constrained the way that it is that because the geometry of the character only goes so far, if you try to pull the staff out past its limits, the staff is going to float. Grab our original IK controls that we're told not to touch, so that way we'll see our character actually stretch to actually show how far the arms can go without affecting original IK handles at all. And this is really fun because now, you know, you can do your flips and dips, and as well as have full control over where his pole is coming from and going to, as well as his left and right hand constraints on top of how you want your hands to connect to this pole. And if things get out of whack, all you need to do is just go back to 0. That brings it right back to default, including the feet as well too. So now with our constraints set up, I know the big question is coming. How do I change the influence, say if I want the left hand to drive the weapon or the right hand to drive the weapon? I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing is we're needing to open up all these constraints that we made here in the outliner. And the big thing to notice is that on all these hip controls, there's something that we're going to change on default. We're going to hit Control A, and under here we're going to be able to drop down the constraint attributes, and under here there's this little checkbox called Enable Rest Position. We're going to turn that off for everything just to make sure that all these nasty little enable reset positions are going to be turned off. This way nothing when you unconstrain or reconstrain certain influences will snap back and forth, and you'll be able to see that in Maya too. So remember the controls that I set up for us in the selection sets right here, the left and right hand constraint. There's in the attributes, there's a little thing called staff W0 on both of these. It's influential from 0 to 1. Now, let's say if I want to do some animation, and I'm going to do some very crude animation to show my point here. Grabbing these hands over here, I'm going to bring the pole close to our guy right here. So let's say now that I want to let go with the left hand and have the pole be driven by the right hand too. There's a couple ways of doing this, but I'm going to show you the one that's most effective using the Anibot tools as well. So say like for example, the pole comes down here. We're going to keyframe here, and then through 7 frames, the pole comes back over here, keyframe. So we have this nice movement. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to grab the left hand constraint, and what we're going to do is just through here we're going to break the constraint from left over 1 frame to 1 to 0. And then by doing that, we're going to continue with the animation of the pole. So coming through here, we come to 7, keyframe, and 13. What you're going to do is pull the constraint out a little bit further and then rotate the pole up. This in turn breaks the pole away from the hand constraint. So now you have the constraint changing on the fly from where it originally is, and then from there we can do what we need to with the left hand. So for this example, the left hand breaks constraint here, keyframe, and then we'll bring the hand out this way, and then his fingers will be splayed out a little bit like that. So now the cool thing is about with this new control that the pole has influence over the hand itself, that the pole pivot is on the top over here. And normally if we want the hand, so to speak, to be driving the pole, our hand control moves here. And let's just say if we want the pole to be pivoting from the hand here, Bot has this really cool temp pivot tool that I utilize. And one really cool feature that it has is called temp pivot to last object right here. Grabbing the object that you want to rotate and translate to. Now grab the object you want it to rotate from. So if we grab our right hand tool and then grab our pole and go to temp pivot last object, the rotation of the tool comes from the right hand, which is so sweet. Now we want it to come out more this way. We can have control over where this pole is going to be moving from and still being influenced and then breaking away from. And just to reset your temp pivot control, all we got to do is just go back to selecting our pole and it goes right back. So now with the right hand influencing the staff, we want to switch back to our left hand now. And to do that, all we need to do is just to find a good connection point. Coming back again with the right hand tool, last pivot object, we're going to come back with our animation somewhere around here, back to the pole. Let's just say if I wanted an under grip here. By here, bringing this back as close as I possibly can to this pole here. That seems to be pretty good. I'll keyframe this, and I'll keyframe the left hand as well too. So this is where we're going to go back to do the constraint as well. So this is where the snap is going to take place again. It's going to be matching the hand that we're connecting with it to. So going to the left hand constraint, this is where our staff was broken. Now we're going to reapply the staff here too over this next frame. And when we do this, you're going to see the hand go shwink. Now coming back into this, as we come to our connect animation, which is right here, put this down a little bit. This is where our contact pose is going to come from the next frame. Now, mind you, there is a visual glitch that happens here that shows the connection making and breaking. And it happens because we're scrubbing the timeline too. So don't freak out. What you're going to do is make special attention to where the contact frame is coming, which is right here. And from this left hand, what we go to is this little basketball called world space. By clicking that, it will understand where your hand is in world space. And on the very next frame, which is the new constraint tool, what we're going to be doing from there is control, we'll either right click and go to paste X world space, or you can hold control click, which gives you this little notification right here. By playing it, your hand is going to be coming back, and then the constraint is happening. Our new hand constraint has been added to the pole. And now the pole is being influenced by both hands again. So your constraint is back. Yay! And then obviously now that this is an under grip too, we're gonna have to take special care to know that the orientation of the hand is gonna be a little bit different. So we're gonna go to 180. And that's the grip pose that we're working through right here. So I'm just gonna grab these rotations and add them here. That way it comes in super clean. Now what we're gonna have here is we're gonna be letting go with this hand over here. So the right constraint will be influenced this time. So the connection happens here. The left hand takes charge, and then we will staff wait, and we will keyframe here. And over the next frame, we will break the constraint and move the staff out. So it's really important to kind of know where your constraints are at. So this will be where the right hand's parent constraint breaks, and from there we'll be able to pull out, which will be influenced by the left hand. And then from there, now with our left hand free to do what we need to do, we can just keyframe as we will, and as well as our right hand here. And dropping our pole vector here. And what's there from really great is that now that with our temp pivot selected, we can bring our new temp pivot down in object mode down to the ground. So that way when we have contact, bing, we can animate onto the floor there. So what you're seeing now is that the weapon being driven by both arms, we have independent access between the hands and the weapon, as well as the weapon of the hands. Where you're seeing in the beginning, the weapon influencing both the hands until the break is happening as of now. The right hand is moving the pole independent of the left hand, and thereby, and then as the animation occurs, the connection of the left hand happens here and reapplies to both hands. And as the animation continues to go on, the new pole is now influenced by the left hand independent of the right hand too. And as we bring it down, the center pivot is contacting with the ground too. So this is an alternate strategy to doing a weapons constraint that you can use. The pole moves along with the hips, and as well as you have your independent hand controls to reposition where your IK is on the pole at all time too. So yeah, that's about it. And that, my friends, is the reverse Donatello constraint. Hope you liked it. And that is the Donatello rig. Hope this helped you guys out a lot. If it did, please consider subscribing to my channel, and as well as leave me a like. It really helps my animation channel out a lot. Oh, and don't forget that free year Noma's workshop that I'm giving out. All that's required is to subscribe and give me a comment. I'm gonna pick my winner at the end of the week and let you guys know who won. Good luck. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one.